Well, there's one of those big fat bullfrogs I was telling you about. Caught himself a Senko. This is my fishing spot today. This is a local lake called Halleck Lake, and it's actually just ponds. It's 3 ponds that are kind of connected in the middle, and they have fountains right in the center, which makes it extremely oxygenated water. And it's a very popular spot for bass. Let's see what we can get done today. I always start up here right in the front. And today I'll be using my Mach 2. And we'll be throwing a wacky rig. This one's gonna be weedless. Since we have a lot of moss and stuff over here, a lot of growth next to the edge. So what I do is I work my way around, starting close. As I learned from the informative fisherman, if you start catching fish further out and you start dragging them through this closer area, then you're basically gonna blow up all these fish as well. So you wanna try and catch anything that is close first. And if nothing bites, then you work your way out kind of in a grid. So you start off doing this stuff down here, and you do the next layer and then the next layer out in each area. So the technique I'm using here is I'm taking your traditional wacky rig. This has the Senko, cast it out, and you're just gonna let that hit the water and sink. It's gonna fall slack on slack line. And this is pretty shallow water, so it doesn't take long. If nothing hits it right away, you're pretty safe to move on to the next spot. So this is a very quick process. And if anything's there, you'll know right away because your line will take off or you'll see a blow up. So you just keep moving on to the next pocket and fish the closer spots first and then work your way out. And a lot of times, especially when it's hot out, like it is today, it's about 85 degrees. You will find little bass in these close spots over here, trying to get away from the hot sun. And you do want to try and keep your space back a little bit from the edge because, believe it or not, they can see you. The clearer your water, the easier it is for them to see you. And this pond is pretty clear. Sometimes you want to go in these tight little spots, like right there, and let it drop down right in between. So now that I've worked all the area close to me, I'm gonna go ahead and go out. There's a shelf out there. I'm just gonna start dragging and twitching this in. See if I can get something to bite. Nice and slow. You should be able to feel the bottom. Get right back out there, work the next part of the grid. And every once in a while, you want to just stop. Twitch and stop, or drag and stop. And that's, a lot of times, that's when they'll hit it. As you can see, we have some beautiful fountains out here. It's a very active area, a lot of families. But they take a lot of care to stock this set of ponds. They put catfish, stripers, largemouth bass, crappie, and bluegill in here. I'm just slowly reeling in, letting it keep contact with the bottom. And every once in a while, I'll just pop it, let it jump, and go back down again. So far, I haven't gotten any bites, and I would expect on this Senko, I'd be getting something by now. So I'm thinking I'm gonna switch over to a more finesse tactic, which in my case is gonna be a trick worm. So let's go ahead and get that out. So in my case, I tend to carry a little bit of everything, but I have a bunch of flukes. I have robo worms that float. A bunch of stuff for Ned rigs, a bunch of Z-Man TRDs and things like that. But what I'm looking for right now is one of these guys. This is your traditional zoom trick worm. And the benefit of this is that it falls very slow on the water column and it just kind of entices them to bite. So let's go ahead and switch that over. So you're just gonna take the old one off, This weed guard is a little shot, but I think it'll still work. This old one's not too bad, so I'll keep that for later possibly. And then what you're gonna do is basically fold your worm in half, like so. And that's your middle. And you're going to put the hook right through the middle of it. Like so. Put the weed guard back on. And we are good to go. Now with this zoom trick worm, a lot of times you will see crappie and bluegill grab it and take off with it as well. Obviously they can't get the hook in their mouth, but they will mess with it. You want to cast by any structure, any plant life on the edges, anywhere there's shade. And once you've hit those spots, if you're not successful, then you can cast it much further out. In my case, I have hit several bass right out by that fountain, and you should watch your line closely. The slightest change, a lot of times they'll pick it up and take off, and you won't see a huge change in what's going on. All of a sudden you'll just see your line take off to the left or right. And many times they will grab this on the fall, so it'll never hit bottom. A lot of times it works really well to fish along the bank line instead of straight in front of you. Pull it across. A lot of times those bass will be sitting right at the shade line in front of all this plant life or any cover, just waiting to ambush. So sometimes this works really well. And there we go. Got one. This is definitely considered a nice Nebraska bass. Before he gets all tangled up here. Yep, there we go. Nice looking guy. Let's get this out of him, get him on his way. Bye, buddy. Oh, just missed one there. Sometimes if you throw it back to them, they go after it again. Fishing is somewhat of an art form. A lot of people think it's throwing some worm on the hook with a bobber, and it's that simple and straightforward. And it's not. There's a lot of things that go into it. Specific tackle, barometric pressure, temperature, the moon phases, temperature of the water, clarity of the water, time of year, pre or post spawn. There's so many different things that can go into it. See, that time, that was a smaller fish that grabbed the worm. I started running with it. So I set the hook and there was nothing there. There was another one. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but another crappie was holding on to the worm. So there must be a school of it sitting over here. And I keep trying to take it. Same thing again. Crappie stole the worm. I'm gonna have to use a loop this time. So typically, when it comes to my zoom worms, I don't usually use a rubber holder like I do with the typical wacky rigs, but there are so many crappie and bluegill out here that are just stealing everything. I'm gonna go ahead and use it. If you've never used one before, you put your worm inside and you slide up one of these and it'll just sit on top of the worm. And in this case, you could probably put it through without doing that, but this is designed for Senkos. And then you're going to rig this the same way you would a regular wacky worm. We're gonna go through part of the skin of the worm as well as underneath that rubber. So it looks like that. Then to put our weed guard back in place, and we are good to go. And there we go. Oh, there we go. Got another one. It's another good version of a Nebraska bass. Feisty, but not too big. See? Got him right in the roof of the mouth. Good shot. Final shot. Say goodbye, bud. Well, I can't tell what's happened here. I had a full take. Oh, there he goes. He just let go. So apparently he went down on the rocks. I set the hook, he went down on the rocks, and I couldn't get him out, so he finally let go. A lot of times, depending on their instinct to just attack whatever lands next to them. Many times when they hit it, they don't even see what it is. Especially in this thick vegetation. Well, let's try right under the bridge. I'm looking right at bluegill and crappie, so maybe there's a opportunistic bass hanging out in there. And there was. He's a little guy. Oh. See, little mini guy hanging out in there. Let's get him back in. I was expecting some bigger ones hiding, but apparently little guys are taking over under the bridge. All right, so now you'll see with the Senko is much thicker, so it actually fits in here better. And this loop, when it goes over the top, will snap right on there. But you will see with this brand, I don't know if you can see that, but there's already a loop embedded right there. So I don't need to do that with this one. It's pretty convenient. So I can just hook it right through the middle. Put what's left of my weed guard on here. If this will work. Good enough. Ready for business. Hopefully we'll get a little bit bigger bass. Now this water is clearer than it typically is. So I can actually see the fish on occasion, which if you know anything about the Midwest and Nebraska, we typically have super muddy water, and almost all the fishing you do is done by vibration and color. Very rarely can you see what you're gonna catch. So I'm going back to my up close techniques, try and get the bass that are inside of this vegetation. And you'd be surprised where they hang out at. I've caught a 3-pound bass in about 8 to 10 inches of water, right up close to the shoreline, and I didn't even know he was there. I just sat down my bait for a second, and all of a sudden the water exploded, and there he was. And with these Senkos, typically I use the same technique as a trick worm. Cast it out there, let it sink, let it sit for a few seconds. If they don't take it, twitch it. If they still don't take it, reel it back in, try again. If they don't grab it on the fall, a lot of times they're not gonna grab it. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before or not earlier, but they can feel the vibration when you walk along this edge. So it's always best, especially if you're flipping and pitching close, to keep back a little bit and walk lightly so they don't feel that. As you can see, they were much more reactive to the zoom trick worm, but a lot of times the bigger ones will go after the Senkos, although you'll catch small ones here and there. The zoom trip worm is such an easy meal for them, and it's effortless, that they'll usually go after it even if they're not hungry. Well, that's one of those big fat bullfrogs I was telling you about. Caught himself a Senko. Got hooked through the lips. Let's get him off of here. Let's get these out of here. And now he's dancing. See if we can get this out without hurting him too bad. It's in there pretty good. There we go. Good job, buddy. Well, on that note, catching bullfrogs instead of bass, I think we'll head out. It's about time to wrap things up here. Sun's going down. Activity's kind of slowed down here as well. But I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll bring more videos like this in the future.